Hey guys, Jake Brown here for RotoCurve. Today we're going to be looking at the pursuit of profit on some of the smaller sites in the industry for NFL. So give me a moment. Let me share my screen with y'all. All right. Oh, well, we'll start right here. We're on Fantasy Aces, and what's on the screen right now in front of you, the It Pays to Win monthly wins bonus, which is something entirely unique in this industry and something I think is really, really cool. They actually allow you to earn a bonus by winning games. I mean, as you see right here, if you were to win 50 games on their site, theoretically you get $5 back at the end of the month. Now, there are small caveats that I believe you have to have won, not necessarily profited, but won $750 off of those wins. So, a $1 win winning you $1.80 counts $1.80. And I think that number used to be 500. So the raised number means that, people are taking advantage of it. And it's more than appropriate for the site to make it a little bit more challenging. I think when they first came out, and I was one of the people that definitely took advantage of this, they had 50-cent games as part of this promotion. So once you get up to the, 30 cents a win, you're playing 50-cent games for, 90 cents of profit, but also, give me one sec, decline that. Also, 30 cents as a bonus once you've gotten to the 400 level. And I can see how that got out of control. I think I was able to get close to $100, or no, more, well over $100, I should say, from their monthly win bonus back then. I think now it might be a $1 minimum, 750 needed rather than 50 cents, 500, but it's still very unique. I guess I can click on more info rather than ignorantly summarizing. So you'll see, yes, 50 wins and 750 in winnings in the month are in fact the numbers, and they reset each month. So intriguing, Here's some examples for you: 450, 135 bonus, and the only two requirements were, as described, any contest payout of 25 cents or more will count towards the contest. So perhaps they've laxed that, and if they do offer 25-cent or 50-cent contests, that's what you can be doing. Now, actually looking at the site itself, like DraftKings, they have a highlighted tab. Switch over to NFL first. So we've got some featured tournaments, not necessarily, in most cases, it's just the biggest tournaments they have, one free roll, a beginners or two, and a micro. And that's exactly what it looks like. There are still good games to play below. One thing they don't have, and I'm sure no sites have but DraftKings after learning that earlier, are, let's see, 3 to 10-man leagues. We were looking at 3-man leagues where they had the top 2 pay. And I don't think anyone else has the availability to create. Yeah, 5-man would be the least. But they still do have 50-cent games. So in terms of grinding that deposit bonus, it's not dirty to do, but you can't play 50-cent head-to-head. So that's the change they made. Oh, the other thing to note is that they do it a little backwards. Rather than raking each person 10 cents, you're putting up to 10 cents off the bat. So you're putting up $2.20 to win. The pot is $2.20 to win 2. Which is slightly lower. I mean, for what it's worth, it's what, 90.9%. So you're looking at 9.1 rake rather than 10. Small difference. Other than that, the biggest difference on Fantasy Aces is Salary Pro format. Classic format, you have your standard salary cap. You have to stay under it. Salary Pro, you have the same salary cap as Classic. The difference being you can go over the cap or under the cap, and going over the cap will cost you fantasy points. So you will start that tournament or that cash game with a deficit in fantasy points, a negative something. Say it's a couple thousand, might be -3, -4. On the flip side, if you don't spend all your money, you'll actually start with bonus points. So if you went 5K under the cap, you might have +10 to start your contest with. So it's a very interesting format. Tons of different ways to strategize, to mess with it, to be honest, and fun. And I'll definitely talk about it during the fun segment, but many times it will be the format that has a little bit of overlay as people are noticing overlay and scrambling to create a lineup, or you'll have people just entering their classic lineups into Salary Pro once in a while at the end, to avoid overlay, and those aren't optimal because they're not taking advantage of the format. So if you want to create a lineup ahead of time and take advantage of the format, play it a little bit, and then look as it gets closer to lock, that's probably the way to go in terms of grinding out a profit. But Fantasy Aces, not the most action. Decent head-to-head action, better than some of the other sites I'm going to mention. Not necessarily better tournaments. The one thing that's incredible about Fantasy Aces, as you probably noticed off the bat, is something that everyone in the industry should have, and that's a multi-entry button that tells you, one, if the contest is multi-entry, and two, how many entries any individual user can have. And it's, bright white bolded on a blue and yellow background in these cases, makes it very simple. So I think that, while the hovering to find out is great, and some sites just have it in parentheses, this is the nuts, as it were. It's the best way to illustrate without any confusion. Speaking of confusion, the only thing that runs contrary to their ability to put out obvious multi-entry counts is the way they actually show you who's in each field. And that's something that I, don't like the way Fantasy Aces does it. And it's the same way that, well, no, it's slightly better than the way FanDuel does it, actually. But every user's games are all grouped together. But for any user that has more than 5, and as you see, that hasn't happened yet, we're talking Tuesday morning, you have to scroll. So if this guy Beast Crew, for instance, had entries all the way down to here, right, one above Thad, it'd be really hard to tell exactly how many entries he had, because it's the way that I've been doing it, to be honest with you, is I've just been highlighting it, copying it, and pasting it into an email and counting. Again, not a huge deal, because at least, unlike FanDuel, they group all of the users' entries together, so that they have multiple entries and that they have a couple, and if it's more than 6, that they have a lot. But it's very hard to pin down the exact number quickly, so that would be something I'd like to see change, but not a huge deal. And again, you already got to see how many people could multi-enter, or sorry, how many entries people could multi-enter with. So pretty self-explanatory lobby. I think it's fairly easy to use site. Hoping they step things up a little bit, because they had some momentum last year. But if I'm being honest with you, this isn't really a site that I would recommend to too many beginners. Beginners only things they do have, and definitely jump on those. I see a beginners only 50-50 with 200 people, and I'm sure the other strategy I should mention right now for beginners stuff is, if you haven't played on Fantasy Aces, wait till about week 8. If you jump in, this is a guess. I don't know. The contest could shrink in half, but if they're still running, this is an $1,000 prize pool. It's not a huge deal. I don't know if they drop it to make it 500, because they run $500 free rolls often, and that would seem a little kind of broke. But if you're able to jump, even now, we're in week 5. A lot of people who are beginners, true beginners who are playing in this format even, or have become experienced, or sharks who signed up for Fantasy Aces accounts for the first time and thus were recognized as beginners, they've run through their eligibility. So now you're probably facing more true beginners, as it were. I'll just, I don't know that that's what this will show, because again, it's way too early. But these are 10 names. I don't recognize any of them. So only players with less than 50 wins are eligible to join. After 4 weeks, most people that have had moderate or even losing weeks that place any volume are probably right around that number. So don't play anything other than beginner if you have the ability to play beginner eligibility and use it out. And that's something that I didn't talk about on DraftKings, but should have. Because it doesn't actually pop up for me to show you. I cannot actually view beginner events on DraftKings. Here I can, and I actually think I can enter them too. And that was something I just realized. Well, I haven't logged in. All right, well, we won't do that now. I believe I have less than 50 NFL wins, having not played Fantasy Aces NFL. We'll switch over to Fantasy Feud. Let's see. Or we won't. And that was something I was wondering if it would happen. Fantasy Feud does not have any NFL contests available. They just have, I'm guessing it's the first night of NHL, so they're going nuts on that. Yep, sure enough, some guaranteed NHL contests in there, or tomorrow rather. All right, well, nothing to show you here. Is not an ideal site for beginners for the most part, not in terms of trying to grind because there's no real cash game option. You can try to sign up with RotoCurve. Promo code Curve, they'll match you 100%, 500 or 600 bucks. But the big thing to keep in mind on Fantasy Feud is what I mentioned kind of each week. And that's that Fantasy Feud is the only site that still uses the old model of payouts really for GPPs, and that nothing's going to pay out more than 15% of the field on most days, and min cash is going to be 2.5 to 3x. So you're actually getting somewhat of a come up for cashing in GPPs on Fantasy Feud rather than almost every other site, which now allows you to make this, the same or less money than if you were in a 50-50 contest for min cashing, 1.8x. So keep that in mind. I don't believe there's that much single entry that's quality, but the multi-entry is smaller field in many cases and just has the ability for a smaller percentage of the field to cash much higher. This would probably be the last of all the sites I'm discussing in terms of beginners trying to grind bankroll on. I do like Fantasy Aces more for the simple reason of that win bonus, because that can really add up at 30 cents a bonus. But yeah, if there were more NFL stuff, I might run you through it. I'll check back in a couple days and see if it's even worthwhile. But as you can see, for what it's worth, double check Fantasy Feud to overlay on Thursday night, because if they don't have salaries released and they're going to have guaranteed prize pools for Thursday, we're talking about, it already being Tuesday. So switch over to Stars Draft. Let me give them some credit. This week they were fully functional, so congratulations. And sure enough, about 30 minutes ago, I went to do this video and they were down, which I actually appreciate, because I appreciate maintenance on a Tuesday, guys. Like, it's a little side note, but you should not be doing maintenance on Sundays, and appreciate it being done on Tuesdays. NFL on here, I haven't messed around with heads up too much because you can't really game select. It's theoretically great in that it levels the playing field. They're anonymous head-to-heads. They match you with someone anonymously. I mean, I haven't heard anyone complaining about them always being matched up with the same studs or anything like that, or pros or anything like that. They're, again, beginners. If you're a beginner, utilize all beginner formats before jumping in while you're still eligible. But head-to-heads, they do have a few that, as you see, this is the entire head-to-head lobby, $0 to 500. There are 2 people that have head-to-head posted. And again, there are 2 people I don't know, probably a plus EV situation to take them. And anyway, we'll show you how the import system works. Or here, we'll draft here real quick and make a dummy lineup. And here, if you want to talk about dummies, let's talk about the Victron. You must select 2 athletes before using the Victron. All right. Le'Veon Bell. And oh, come on. I will go Mike Evans. All right. Create with Victron. I cannot pretend to know exactly how this works, but this is basically weighting how much you, it's so arbitrary, but how much you weight historical performance versus recent performance. So if I were to do an all-team versus on recent performance, you'd see I had pretty much everyone who scored touchdowns last week. Alan Hearns, Martellus Bennett, Drew Brees, Devonta Freeman, David Austin. So yeah, I mean, as I slide it, a quarter of the way, let's see, you get a guy, okay, so then they'll throw in your Deion Lewis's or your Travis Benjamins, who are more boom bust when they come on the low end. That's pretty funny. And if you go all the way historical, you'll probably get I was expecting a, yeah, nope. So yeah, I mean, this, as you can see, this isn't even really giving me what I expect. I would expect to see historical, Gronkowski, Peyton Manning, Demaryius Thomas. So I can't, again, whether, do you value touchdowns? I don't know who would ever have touchdowns at low. I mean, that just seems foolish, but they're somewhat arbitrary sliders. What I use them for is the ability to create a dummy lineup each week, and I like doing this. Touchdowns high. Oh, come on. Come on, Victron. Yeah, it doesn't like me right now. We're going to end up having to reload the page. I think it's a useless tool, to be honest. I'm not going to pretend that I think there's anything worthwhile to use the Victron for, other than if you have tickets to play the Victron, you will beat it. It's like taking candy from a baby. But I was just honestly hoping to be able to use it to create a quick lineup, and it's bugging out a little bit, but that might be why they're doing maintenance, which is again good to be doing on a Tuesday. Okay. I mean, I don't care. It's a dummy lineup. Create. So we want all the touchdowns. Cool. I'm not going to mess around. Enter. Now, what I wanted to show you was once you have a lineup created, you can click import, and the import tool is pretty neat in that it will show you all of your entries right here. So I like that in that it's written out. You can see multiple kind of side by side by position. I just like the format of it. I also love the red and the green. It really pops on the black background, though I wasn't not particularly huge on gray on black. But you just click import. It's entered. If it's a multi-entry contest, you can keep clicking this and it'll just, that entry where it said one entry will turn to 2 to 3 to 4. But again, there were 2 head-to-heads on here Tuesday morning for Thursday night. So not necessarily. You can also sort by entries. I guess if everything is 0, there's just nothing to find. So as I showed you before, you can play your anonymous head-to-heads, which is fine, but I'm a huge fan of game selection being an edge. So kind of being randomly matched up, while it's still better than being able to be scooped, it's not necessarily ideal. So, if you want to play around with it and mess with it, you won't be scooped on this site. I mean, if you post a head-to-head, you will probably as soon as someone who's a sharp logs in, because there just aren't people posting them. But playing the anonymous is a decent way to get diversity, at least in your cash game, because you'll only be playing each person once. Other than that, let's see if they have any promotions going on. It's Stars Draft right now. Looks like 100% up to a 250 deposit bonus. So probably the worst site to try and grind a deposit bonus is standard is pretty much 500 to 600 at 100% and a 4% drip. So not necessarily the best site for the purposes of the mindset of those who should be watching this video. If you're trying to grind for a profit, football, at least you can play on multiple sites because they're, Sunday and Thursday lock gives you a lot of time when pricing comes out Monday or Tuesday. Basketball, I will be doing a lot different videos, and you really have to make decisions to play on 2 to 3 sites a night, in my opinion. But football, you can play on a lot. But again, this one's not necessarily the best for bonuses, such as the 250 match or head-to-head play. And since those are what we're really talking about and trying to look for when we're grinding, comes up a little bit short in those areas, though they do have decent-sized tournaments. So, which should display now. There we go. So 150,000 prize pool is nothing to sniff at. It's I don't believe it's ever raked as of yet, meaning it hasn't 10 times 15,000, 150, break even point, has not filled the 15,000 as of yet. Probably will one of the next 2 or 3 weeks, though. I've been having a decent amount of fun, success this week, not last, at playing the $100 GC, $100, 75,000. Means it needs to fill to 750 to eliminate overlay and start raking. Most weeks it's filling in the high 6s, so you have minimal overlay. One thing they do not do is you cannot hover over multi-entry to figure out how many multi-entries. You actually have to click on the contest. The nice thing they do is it doesn't open a whole new page. It's just a drop down. So if you wanted to look at multiple contests at a time, you can do it like that and just switch off and say, oh, that one, go to this one. And again, this is where your multi-entry is. This number is way too high for my liking. I was playing like 15 and 10 entries in here. Don't really think it's worthwhile because there are a lot of people playing 50 plus. And again, if to be able to buy more, I believe that no one should ever be able to buy more than 1% of the prize pool. And I think that if you're trying to grind for profit and you're not playing multi-entry, you should, maybe a little higher than that, but you should be along those lines. Anything that's allowed, I've said this on past videos. Very successful player Max Delorys basically, I believe, come out and said he likes to try to buy 2.5% of the prize pool, which usually matches up to the prize if you were to come in 5th place. In this case, that would be about 35 entries, be $350. Or sorry, that was some very bad math. But sorry, I lost my place. Oh, and as you can see here, also the parentheses. We were just going over how, while Fantasy Aces makes it really easy to know how many multi-entry off the bat there are, which you cannot find anywhere in the lobby just from hovering or looking. Once you go into the contest to look at your player pools, however, you have to scroll to figure out how many people have. So if Fantasy Aces and Stars Draft could combine those two systems and basically have here 200 displayed next to the M while still maintaining this, or for Fantasy Aces, if you guys could just include this format for your players already entered in, makes things much, much easier. And you can see that there's no one, a couple people have 10. Sure, if you check back on Saturday, you'll see people with 50. And for me, it's just incredibly discouraging to be playing multi-entry, be playing against multi-entry big fields when I'm not multi-entering. And again, $10 has been over, $100 has been overlaying. The 25 has not, for the weeks that I've played, and Thursdays haven't big either. Though I believe you've been able to get into some of these double ups, which are, rake double ups, but if you can get in them with under 80 people, you're not paying rake. I think most of the time they do come in right around 80. But these are all the available contests. The one thing that I really wish the site would improve on, it's a horrible functional issue in my opinion, is to scroll the actual lobby. You have to do what I'm doing right now. You have to just go next to where it says draft, and a bar will show if you see that gray bar on your screen, and then that's how you scroll. It's also very easy to fall off the bar and click draft by mistake when you're coming off it, and it's right next to this bar. So you see, and it's gray. I mean, just don't really, not that I don't understand, they were a little short-sighted in the creation of that. And you'll also see, okay, this is worth talking about. Let's find them first. NFL double ups. Entries. Nope. Does not look like they're. Oh, they had what are called unique entry double ups. I do not know if that idea has already been scrapped, but that was their salary pro, if you will, their unique format where you could multi-enter, but they had, and I think that's what the MU was from the last page, actually. Yeah, you can multi-enter, yeah, but it's multi-entry unique lineups. So there's no ability to run a train, so to speak, and just put in 10 lineups, all the same, one click of the button. What that means is that if you're chasing overlay in a double up with 10 or 15 minutes to lock, you're not going to be able to create, max out 50 entries, 20 entries, whatever it is that you feel comfortable playing in a plus EV overlay situation. So you may just want to, give yourself a little extra time if you're playing on a site like this to notice that, so that maybe 10, 15 minutes before lock, you can create the same exact team with, if you think it's the team that's pretty solid for an overlaying double up, with the exact same players, and just rotate out defense or rotate out one running back or rotate out one flex. And again, you can always just go import, scroll down. Whoop. Okay, so again, I picked the bottom contest. I have to find this stupid thing. Oh, and also, it's a Sunday contest. So that's this guy not being the brightest. You can go draft. If you click import on the other screen, as you saw when it drops down, on the other screen, if you were to do this without coming into the contest, it would just import and show entry 1, which you can't do for those uniques. So in this case, you import, you knock off your defense or whatever else is the case, you substitute in, and well, obviously pricing's not right on this, and then enter. So that's Stars Draft. Was a little critical of them for having some technical issues week 1 to 3. Didn't have any week 4. But again, profit's about finding the overlay, but not really chasing with multi-entry, because their multi-entry limits are high enough that most of us, RotoCurve members are priced out from being able to compete with the top multi-entry guys. Let's move over to Draft Pot, an incredibly different place to play. Draft Pot, which if you use promo code Curve, they will match you 100% up to $1,500. I believe Roto Grinders had put out that they had an exclusive $1,500 deal as opposed to the $1,000 match. That's clearly the word exclusive was not used correctly, as it's available to everybody. And as you see, I'm working on my way. I'm grinding it. Got 75 bucks out of it so far. The other thing, the most worthwhile thing to mention about grinding your deposit bonus is that they are released at a rate of 8% of the entry fees. I don't know if you're aware that all deposit bonuses in this industry aren't bonuses. They're, drip bonuses that you get 4% of entry fees back. What that means is every $100 spent, you get $4 back. Win or lose, that's 100 in entry fees, not in winnings or losings. Or losses. That was a fun time to make up a word. Start at a rate of 8%. So 4% means that you would have to play $2,500 to make 100. So to unlock $100 of a deposit bonus on every other site in the industry takes you playing $2,500, $2,500 to get 100 back from your supposed matched bonus. Now, while there was, smaller lawsuits in courts and sites have paid out and not paid out on this issue, DraftPot has basically doubled that rate. 4% to 8% means instead of having to play through 2,500, you have to play through 1,250 to make your 100, getting $8 out of every 100 spent. So it's honestly just a double drip of every other site in the industry. And they match you up to 1,500, which is the second, with promo code Curve, which is the second largest match bonus in the industry, with twice the speed of it paying out. So definitely the first site I'd look at if you're trying to grind a bonus is DraftPot. The other thing is that all of their rake is 8 to 10%. So in many cases, if contests are filling, which they have not done for the most part in the larger fields, you're actually just playing rake free. If it's 8% rake, 8% drip on your deposit bonus, 0 rake overlay, you're actually getting paid to play, if you want to look at it that way. Again, a little bit unique here. Love the coloring. Might be, some people might not. For me, seeing different colors, you get familiar with what to look for. It's great. Multi-entry, unfortunately, does not, displays that it is multi-entry. You still have to go in to figure it out. There is no limit to the number of times you can enter this contest. Multi-entry, there is no limit to the number of times you can enter this contest. You seen the theme here? Let's see. Multi-entry, there is no limit to the number of times you can do this contest. So again, not a place to play tournaments. Just pointless. I mean, if you can, for fun, we'll talk about that in the for fun video, but we're playing for profit here, folks. And if there's no limit, just no limit, no, you're not playing. Not playing. I will throw in my one lineup into this $20 contest if I have, more than $200 in play, which I usually do, and that'll be it, just to have one chance, because this actually usually fills out of the 2,200. It's been filling to about 15, 16. I would imagine it fills about 17.5 to 18 this week. Which again, if you're someone who says, hey, I want a lot of money and I want to go mess around with multi-entry and see if I can play some mass multi-entry, I mean, this is as mass as it gets. So, you could jump into this and for 20 bucks, throw down, 100 lineups or 75 lineups, have a substantial percentage of the entries and mess around like that on this site. You know, get a decent amount of your drip back, and there's no entry limit. But again, I mean, no entry limit is basically the same as a 500 entry limit, you know, or in this contest, probably a 200 entry limit because it's nearly 10%. But again, it doesn't look like they have any in place. So make sure when you're entering double ups that you're aware of that. You can click on your participant. Well, see one with participants. That would make sense. You can click on your participants tab, show you who has entered. Let's try to find one with a multi-entry. Just says multiple, non-ideal, not really the most helpful or transparent. So that would be, you know, if anyone gets back to them on this, that would be what I would look to change. That needs to, you know, good luck, Mr. Neufeld. That needs to be a number, in my opinion, so we actually have an ability to know, because what we've just kind of uncovered together is this might be the only site that there is zero way to find out how many entries someone has in the contest. And I use only with quotes because FanDuel is like that. When you, I mean, I tried hunting down Ganondorf's entries one time without a CSV in a slam or a monster. That shit takes longer than, you know, an entire day of research. Again, can't be aware of that, because you know that there are 3 people in this pool who have multi-entered. You can do the math if you want to really add up everyone else to find out how many they have, but you still have no idea who has what. So again, a little bit of naivety from me. I hadn't noticed that before. I've been playing a little bit more than I would have in formats, and I will adjust going forward week 5. All right, now let's get to the left side. A lot of people are, you know, I'll let you know, you're still going to make the mistake. Clicking on this just brings up the legend of what these things mean. It does not start eliminating or selecting anything. You see? And yeah, says it right here, and I was just, you know, blind to it. There is no limit on any multi-entry. So anything with an M, ignore unless you're going to try to seriously multi-enter in terms of large fields, or be aware of the, you know, of the double up situations with, if you do have participants who are multi-entering. If you do see the, you know, M in parentheses, you know, when I get off this video, I'll probably send them an email. I would urge you to do the same just for a little bit more transparency going forward. And they're probably the most intelligent people running a site right now. And I had an issue, a display issue that wasn't a technical issue, is the numbers were adding up on Sunday, and they, you know, this was 3 minutes after lock, and they stayed with me for 20 minutes chatting to make it right. So definitely great customer service. And all you do for that, you click the button, type in, and you'll have someone chatting with you. And very likely, you know, they're a small startup. You read the article about them. I want to say Forbes, but I could be New York Times. You know, 4 young guys from Colombia living together in New York. So a lot of times you do get responses from one of them directly. And when you have someone with stake in the company interacting with you in general, you get some of the best customer support. Anyway, let's move back over here. If you scroll down, you can start filtering things. And you can sort by a variety of things as well. I tend to, you know, click guaranteed right off the bat, unless I want to search for a head-to-head, which you can do. As of now, there are no NFL head-to-heads in the lobby. And so while I was about to make the point that on Sundays you can usually find more head-to-head action on DraftPot than Stars Draft, but it's minimal, you can't find it as early, apparently. Now let's go into fan mode first. What fan mode is a non-salary cap game. So might be saying, really? And yes, really. You just play with no salary cap. No salary. You pick the players you want. Now you might be saying, what the hell are these? What are they ranked? DPPG? Is this fantasy points per game? Yes, that's how they're listed. So the best players, or even the top players in matchups for a week, might not be in the first list. So especially if you're playing, no matter which mode you're playing, be aware of that. Make sure you're utilizing the search for players and not wasting time assuming someone will be somewhere near the top when they are actually much further down. But what that leads us into, and I don't really play fan mode. I don't see much of an edge in it, but we'll talk about it in the fun section. GM mode is their salary cap mode. And it's basically a mode where you have a certain amount of points per game and each player's cost is their performance on the season or a combination of this season and last season, and their daily and their draft pot points per game. So the number one thing to remember on a site like this when creating rosters is that value is more important than on any other site. You're going to have, I honestly go tier through tier, waste the 3 minutes looking at probably 50 guys who haven't been on the football field yet, to be honest. But every once in a while, Devonta Freeman, both of the last 2 weeks, was under 10 DPPG. And you'll see the kind of players that are above that. But again, if a player has never played, they're at 4. Most rookies are somewhere between 4 and 10, depending on position, before week 1. So again, it's kind of just making sure you're not missing anyone. Again, here's Tevin Coleman. So if Devonta, Tevin was really cheap, I believe, earlier in the season as well. So he came back and reclaimed the starting role. Or, this week, here's your play, I guess. Booby is 4.49. You have both running backs in front of him out. So, he's going to be a lock in almost every single person's lineup. And if you just started at the top, you would have, you can see how many people there are above him. Gurley's the other one. There we go. So this is kind of how I play draft pot. Little strategy article on the side. Dion Lewis is another one. And you're just left with so much salary relief because of an ability to just pop in all of these cheap plays. So they will probably, Carlos high 7. And as you saw to start, I should mention, because all these things just look, 6 and 7 or less cost. You have an average of 12.73 to start, but you get a kicker. So you're not going to be paying 12.73 on your kicker. You're going to be saving a little bit there. And defense, you're going to be saving even more in many cases. So, we'll go with who's probably going to be the top defense next week. I'm not sure. It's Tuesday, guys. I haven't really done much, but we'll throw Denver in. So even just throwing in, and if you want to get cheap, you can set it up with D and kicker. And again, profit minded. I have McManus every week. It's absurd on this site. Now I have 14.15 left to play. I know the running backs that are cheap because I went through it there. So I know that Gurley's cheap. I know that Dion's cheap. Who else was it? Booby was cheap. And there was Joseph Randall was cheap. But as you'll see, DeMarco Murray is your 4th priced running back. You got to take advantage of the system. You got to go through. So now you're going through 12 players. You're going through 16 players, 20 players, 28 players, 32 players before Lat Murray's the 32nd ranked, 36. What I love, though, is that Trent Richardson is up here and might come back as of today, possibility. But 40, there's so many players that you're going to go through before you get to these cheap guys that there are people coming on these sites that just aren't going to play them, that are just going to miss the fact that so many guys are incredibly underpriced. And I happen to do that with running back most weeks because there seem to be more of them than receiver. And then you're left at this spot. Like I'll take out Carlos Hyde. We'll have another flex. But Dixon's a safe play. Lewis is a safe play. Gurley's a safe play. When you take into account, and here's the big part, that they are 1/4 of the price of the top tier running backs. Okay, Booby's 1/5. Gurley's 1/4. Dion's about, what are we trying to say here? 3, a little more than a third. Between a third and a quarter. So it's that relation right there. Like it doesn't really matter what matchup many running backs are in if you say that they're starting and they need, for value, they need to do 25% of what, the top tier guys do. Well, we were looking for 150 yards and a touchdown and a couple catches out of the top guys. That's great. Do the math. That's, 37, 38 yards and a touchdown every other week and a catch. It's just what you're asking out of them to hold value with these top tier guys is obscene. So I just go cheap at running back. I do the same at quarterback, not not all the time, but almost every week there's a quarterback. I believe Luke McCown was $0 first week. So that was something that was just really interesting. Talk about actually punting. You could just play him for $0. But again, he's 8. Now, quarterback's the only position where most of the time, with the exception of the $0, guys will be 8 minimum. You can't get that extreme value. Backups are all 8. Rookies to start the season are like 10. And the top guys, are 20. So you're talking about a 2-to-1 ratio, not quite as much of a detriment as running back. But again, I always would rather play all the cheap plays, have an obscene amount of cap, and work my way back to upping it than the other way around. Ty God's just been too cheap all season, still hasn't raised. He's questionable, so we'll look out for that. And I think, so there was a week where Tyrod and Johnny Manziel, when they were both starting in week 1, or week 2 rather, were under 5 fantasy points as a cost. But basically what it enables you to do now is just take, if you wanted to, all of the top players. You could take Antonio, which, it's with Vic, so might not be all the top players. You could take Demarius, you could take Julio. And then you could still probably take damn near the top tight end with 17.6. And obviously Gronk is a huge difference. If you're doing a different lineup construction, you keep in mind he's 19.7. You can find a starting guy at 4 if you could find one. If you go with Crockett, if you were GPP in it, or Barnage, you're looking at a 5-to-1 ratio again. So even if Gronk goes for 100 yards and a touchdown, or 2 touchdowns and 100 yards, these guys need 20 yards to that 100, need 1/5 of the touchdown. It's such a cap relief site that it's almost too easy to create a lineup. It is too easy, I should say, to create a lineup you feel entirely comfortable with. But one thing that I like that they've done is actually they sent out an email to users asking if they should lower their salary cap. So they've shown a bit of responsiveness. They've pretty much bought into using this format, which is unique. It doesn't have to be bad, but as of now, there's just too many DPPGs to go around with all the values that occur in the NFL as a result of injuries every single week. But yeah, to be able to look at your lineup and say, all right, I got Tyrod, Todd Gurley, Dion Lewis, Antonio Brown, Demaryius Thomas, Julio Jones, Rob Gronkowski, Larry Fitzgerald, Anthony Dixon, the Falcons, and McManus. It is too easy. But what's important to keep in mind with it being so easy is if you're playing in double ups or 50-50s or head-to-heads, that's fine. There are people who aren't going to notice the fact that you can just basically save on extreme value. So I think it is still a great place to grind it. It's the best place to grind your deposit bonus. And I think there are formats that are really good for doing so. The way I prefer to play on this site is to just try to play their one entry in that $20, because multi-entry I'm not really up with, except for double ups. And this is a great site to run trains on double ups. If you want to, let's see. There it is. If you want to play a double up, NFL double up, you got a $10 double up here. It's going to pay out $750. So, 10, 15,000, easy math, break even point. So basically, if they have less than 1,500 entries, you are playing in an overlaid situation. And I think, again, it's very easy to play a very chalky lineup if you just take the 10 minutes to go through the unsightly price ranges and find the starters. That's what I do. I'll run 5, 10 team trains and double ups and things like that. May even consider, and I did last week, playing the $100 double up if it overlays a little bit. But again, always be cognizant of multi-entry. And, if you don't mind, you can do me a favor, or if, you feel the same way, feel free to email DraftPot and just request that M become a number. But fun site, grinding away at the bonus, so to speak, and having a little bit of success through a couple of weeks. Not huge dollar values to play, but usually does have a couple head-to-heads as well. So this is DraftPot. Again, number one thing to make sure you remember is if you are like me and you do not wish to play any uncapped mode contests, that you put GM mode highlighting right away. So keep in mind, fan mode red, GM mode, can't be both, black. They try to make things easy on you. All right, well, I'll try. If you're still with us, we'll get to my favorite site in the industry right now, which is Fantasy Draft. Uh, yeah, so they actually do have they do have a Thursday night contest this week. But the single best thing about Fantasy Draft, as I gushed over in the lobby video, is yes, you have to hover, but I'm not going to complain. Multi-entry contest, you can enter this contest 20 times. Multi-entry contest, you can enter this contest 20 times. See a pattern? Oh, 8, 20, 20, 20. Biggest one, 20. Fantasy Draft gets the skill game. They understand. They understand that mass multi-entry is playing percentages on hunches, on ownerships in big fields, and really has nothing to do with your ability to better predict an athlete's performance day to day than the person who's playing against you, which is what we sell to the public as the skill game. So I'm very happy that Fantasy Draft has decided to be the only site to start really protecting against kind of a bastardization of our skill game, in my opinion. What it also means is that if you have the bankroll, you can max out entries, and it's the only site where you can probably do that and feel like you have a level playing field. You know, $40 to max out your $2 entries. So, you know, most of you, I think most people, if you're playing GPPs or, you know, if you're playing a couple bucks, this is the site to do it if you've risen to the point of being able to play $40. Same goes here at $100. I was messing around a little bit with the $20 contest, and week one it was great overlay. Again, pays out $27.80. I believe almost two of the 3 weeks, 3 of the 4 weeks, it was damn near close to being a 50-50. Again, payouts for this, not necessarily the best at the bottom, but not as bad as that DraftKings 1 millionaire. Here, at least, while you're only 1.5xing, 12,080 people are 1.5xing. So a minority of the field is 1.5xing. The majority, you know, 1,500 out of the 2,780, it's a slight majority, but it's still a majority, are 2xing or greater. And that was my bigger issue on some DraftKings contests where you have, you know, 10 to 20% of, or 20%, something like that, of the entire people who have won are going to double your money. In this case, you're looking at more like 54, 55%. So it's nice. Does get top heavy, which is fine. I mean, I'm not top heavy, rather. It doesn't have a huge job. You have 2 ways to win 5 figures, and that's not always the case. So I actually like the payout structure here a little bit. Again, 1.5, not ideal. I always want it to be 1.8 because I feel, you know, you're playing cash games, blah, blah, blah. If you're coming to the top 20%. On Fantasy Draft, it doesn't really matter because they've overlaid every single week. And I can't understand for the life of me why people aren't jumping in, if not these tournaments, why people aren't jumping into these double ups. And it's very, I mean, you're going to have a double up here that need, you know, 2,500. And this is what actually the one I just ran last week. And I, you know, not a humble brag or anything. I went 20 for 20, as a lot of people probably did, because you're talking about 2,500 people out of what ended up being a pool of 4,000. Yeah, 2,500 out of a pool of 4,000. So you're looking at nearly, like, you know, 5/8, like 62%, 62.5, I guess, of entries were cashing in a double up in an industry where rake is getting out of control. So this is just something that, if you're playing for profit, please, week 5, get some action in on Fantasy Draft double ups, at whether it's the $5 range, whether it's at the $10 range. Sometimes they have a 2, but I don't think that so. So again, you know, you can play $300 in double ups that I will feel pretty comfortable saying there will be no rake on, and there will probably be overlay in a double up, and they're guaranteed. And no one else is going to be able to run in a 100-person train and knock you out too far. If you can afford $300 for cash games, I would say that Fantasy Draft double ups, I favor over playing smaller site head-to-heads right now while this overlay situation exists. I tweeted about it earlier. It just, you know, even if that gets up to 4,800, if you're talking about being able to play a double up what grinds my gears about double ups is that the rake increases have gotten insane and there's no standardization on them. But if this $10 contest fills under 5,000 people, which I would bet it does, and if this $5 contest fills under 4,000 people, which I bet it does, every dollar you are playing on a 50-50 as opposed to a double up is now minus the EV compared to this, in that you're getting paid 1.8x instead of 2 for the same field. Also, 50-50s have to fill to run. So, you're always paying 10% rake. Right now, fantasy draft double ups are the single best contests in the industry. And you know what? I'm okay giving that up. And if by week 7, the site has become, I go to it for enough people that starts disappearing, hey, if you listened first, you got in. But yeah, there's really no reason to be playing any cash games on smaller sites without putting, if you have less than $300 to play on cash games on the smaller sites, I would be playing it all on fantasy draft. Last week, for what it's worth, I mixed up my entries in the $10. I'm not someone who's really comfortable running an entire train. So I think I ran like maybe 2 6-person trains. And then the other 8 entries, I put 8 entries into the 25 and I matched each one up with a $10 double up. And that was my way of having, 60% of it being on 2 lineups for cash game and then so forth with these. What actually happened was 6 of my 8 25s cashed. This ended up filling, maybe 6,000 people or so. Not filling it all, still huge overlay as there is every week. And I think I cashed 6 out of my 8. Those same 8 lineups went 8 for 8 in the double ups. So, slightly more overlay. Seriously, I'm just going to gush one more time. You have to be joining these 2 contests. It doesn't make sense not to. And if you want to see what it looks like, I know a lot of us have a lot of jokes about fantasy draft from last year. I would be comfortable saying their launch last year was one of the worst product launches of any product I've ever noticed in my lifetime. And I give them equal credit for being one of the quickest turnarounds that I've ever seen as well. So their pricing is roster positioning. You can check our scoring article on them. Got 10K minimum at quarterback. And what are your minimums? The other thing, 6K. So remember, I try to keep things in regards to ratio and in min price. Min price at 6K. Excuse me, when running backs are mostly priced, top guys priced between 14 and 16, is not quite that 3-to-1 ratio of other sites. Or of some other sites. It's more like the, let's say, DraftKings. And wide receivers similar to DraftKings as well. I think the ratios are very similar to DraftKings. But again, you just select your player. He'll pop in over here. And get 2 flexes, get a defense. Again, fantasy draft, give them another round of applause and a positive direction thumbs up for removing a kicker. Last year they had a kicker. This year they don't. So, hey, I mean, in terms of rags to riches, like this site is a complete turnaround. So please do not allow, yourself to be overly colored by what you experienced last year. I was harsher on them than you were. I can promise you that. And I'm still playing here. One thing to note, it's an interesting thing. They only allow you to deposit $600 at a time. So just be aware of that. If you're planning on trying to play big and you have PayPal, which is, has certain limits, possibly, or a debit or bank account with certain limits. I had to, before the season started, if I wanted to put up, like $2,400, I had to do that over a couple days. So give yourself the time. If you see something overlaying, it would suck to not be able to play something because you've reached your limit for the day's deposits when you have that money to deposit. As you see here, only 600. You can't pick an amount higher. But if you pick 600, you'll get that 600 deposit bonus. And I think there should be a code if you hit deposit. But if you use, let's see what it was. Curve, CURVE, with a $sign and a 5. As your promo code, you will, in addition to this, also get like a $5 ticket to play with. And you'll make my boss happy. And we'll provide for our sponsor, as they do sponsor things on RotoCurve. And on top of that, I am endorsing this site because I'm playing on it. I'm not bullshitting you. I know a lot of people who followed me last year just really in disbelief that I would be playing on a fantasy draft after last year. And just to recap, what happened last year, week 1, was at midnight, Saturday night or Sunday morning, until lock, you couldn't access fantasy draft. So they just had like, the frustration, I think, was that they had like 80% overlay to the point where every entry was guaranteed to min cash and some were guaranteed to even not min cash, in some contests. So with that in mind, people were frustrated they couldn't get in on it. But it's not like anyone was really screwed. For some reason right now, clicking on my contest isn't loading. So I guess all that praise has gone to their heads for the short moment, and they're just slacking off. No, we're just kidding here. But yeah, I wanted to show you that I have been playing a significant amount and maxing out that 20x every week on the 10 and the 5. I do practice what I preach, as does everyone here at RotoCurve. So I hope you enjoy that. Oh, that's Twitter. That's just a little bit annoying. 6 degrees. I mean, you can do that if you want. I don't think I have any referrals anymore. I think I did last year, and then they all quit. We'll see. Again, I mean, it's not gaming them, I guess, in this sense of you'd sign up your friends anyway, right? So if you want to, and I haven't gotten this approved, but if you take a referral from RotoCurve, it would seem to be more valuable for you to refer the next person, rather than referring them through RotoCurve. It'll get you closer to the next level bonus. You'll be one away, and it'll put RotoCurve into that next level bonus. So I mean, I guess if you have a group of friends that want to join it, while it's gaming the system, so to speak, as long as you're not lineup sharing every day and using it to try to just take money out of the playing pool without really playing the skill game, so to speak, yeah, feel free to sign up one person under you, and it makes more sense for that person to continue signing people up. So I guess that would be my pitch, jokingly enough. Hey, Ricky, if you're out there, I think I'm signed up under you and I'm playing. So if you want to give out my referral code, doesn't that mean it'll help you out more? I don't know. You're giving me a T-shirt, so we're all good. I'll finish up with, they have some interesting, there was a Clayton Kershaw experience and a London Fletcher experience. So, the partnerships with the athletes that we were all clowning on last year, considering the site wasn't working, may end up becoming something that is really, really cool after people got to meet Kershaw and you have Fletcher and you have so many other top athletes and commentators stumping for them and endorsing them that it remains to be seen with the fact that they do, have semi-qualifiers these days. Obviously, when I click on qualifiers, it doesn't work. Head-to-heads, didn't get into that. I don't play head-to-heads on Fantasy Draft because it takes forever to seem to find them. But they do exist, and to be fair, they exist more than on other sites. And you know what? I should join them because I'm not going to really recognize the users too much. I didn't realize they had so many, to be honest with you. I thought that they just had like 1 or 2 for each price range, and it looks like they have 3 to 4 for each and each slate. So yeah, I mean, jumping in, looking at one of these, checking the entrance, seeing if you recognize the name, and click and enter. So don't be discouraged. I mean, again, this is Free Money Tuesday today, so don't be discouraged if DraftKings and FanDuel start to have less and less on that. Whoop, I'm not signed in. Oh well, have less and less on that day. Because other sites, as I'm noticing alongside you, the people that are in the head-to-heads at the smaller sites are also, not lesser players, but newer players, if you will. That just logged me out. Oh, well. So that was Fantasy Draft, my single favorite place to play. The promo code to use is curve $5. And, best of luck and keep them sharp. If you have any questions, feel free to always shoot me a message on Twitter. Send me a tweet, but I do prefer to respond in direct message to Twitter. 140 character limits are not ideal for good discussion, and privacy makes people a bit more open. But you can ask pretty much anyone. I'll get back to you. Again, take it easy.